Evening, gentlemen. Tuesday night heading towards midnight. Alistair, start with you. After the results, I think the sacking is more or less inevitable. However, what I'm looking at is perhaps with my over-conspiratorial mind is that I've got it in my head that they were preparing to give him the chop, that Falkirk provided the perfect excuse, and also in terms of timing, it gives the club, a fortnight to play with in terms of getting a new guy in where there's no home games, etc., and gives them a bit of time to work with. What's your thoughts, first of all, on the sacking and then the timing?
Um, I think long overdue would be probably the vast majority of people's opinion on it. He should arguably have gone after Bruges away when we're a goalkeeper. A goalkeeper keeps the score down there. Kind of show of mercy probably kept the score down. So he should have gone after that one. But there's been so many occasions throughout his 17 matches, 123 days, whatever it was, where you could have put a compelling argument together for him to go. I don't know how much the accosting of Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart in the hotel lobby after the European tie hastened their decision. But that probably gave them at close quarters an insight just into how deep-seated the fans' opinion was, or the fans' disdain was for this individual. We didn't want him in the first place, Mark. He's done nothing in his tenure to ingratiate himself with the supporters, the way he speaks, the way he conducts himself, or sorry, past tense now, the way he spoke, the way he conducted himself. Um, it just had to be done. The timing's probably the right time for us as a club because we've got that wee bit of breathing space now with the international break. But aye, long overdue, most certainly.
Duncan, coming to you, if you can consider his appointment was done by a committee that was Patrick Stewart, Kevin Thelwell, Greta, Andrew Kavanagh, Parag, and that I think is likely to be the same committee, more or less, that'll bring out the new guy. My problem with this is that we're now making a habit. When I was a kid, we used to laugh about Italian teams and Spanish teams, sacking coaches after 6 months or 12 months. And yet here we are doing exactly the same in Bonnie, Scotland. So we keep saying that you know, there can't be a next time. They've got to get it right this time. So in terms of what are you looking for in the recruitment process this time?
I'm looking for them to get it right. Once is a mistake, twice is a problem. Um, I think Alistair's right in terms of this was an appointment that, from the very beginning, was not welcomed by the vast majority of the Rangers support. And in terms of the next appointment, the imminent one that's coming in, they really have to make sure that they are 100% certain that the person they appoint can move this club forward. Um, there's been a lot talked about philosophies, about the style of play, the kind of manager. It's very simple. They need somebody who can get a team winning on the park. And I've said on this podcast before, and I'm sure others have as well, is the most simple way to get the fans united and behind the new owners, and for a lot of the other background noise to be eliminated, is by getting a team that wins on the park. They need a winner. They need a leader of men. They need somebody who carries respect. They need somebody who carries respect not only in the dressing room, but also in terms of with the media, with the fan base. It has to be somebody that we as a support can trust. Because let's be honest, we are swimming around here in a sea of uncertainty where we do not know what is happening. We had an enormously exciting period where, for a long time, a takeover was rumoured. It then grew apace. It came to fruition. I think there's not one person who didn't feel that this was the turning of the oil tanker. and yet 2 months into the season, arguably in a worse state than we were at the beginning of last season. So the pressure is on. They have to get this appointment right. They cannot afford another failure. It's quite simple.
Mhm. Lee, at one of the home games at Ibrox, I bumped into Paul Burns, who was a partner in pubs with Walter, and obviously very biased towards Walter. But he said to me, he said, if Walter had been rehired, or somebody like Walter, he walked into that dressing room on the Friday morning and looked at the players, he'd have sent out a team that, if not winning a game, would certainly for the first couple of games be able to stifle the opposition, slow it down, defend properly, play players in position. And that's what kind of gets me. I mean, it was kind of mentioned that, none of us here are professional coaches, none of us have played to any great standard. But yet, fans basically are the game. We provide everything in which this is all built. And you're looking at, I would say probably if you look at the signings that were made, I was reasonably happy. Hasn't it turned out that way? But then, so you've got new guys involved, but then you've got the crazy team selections, you've got the crazy tactics. Mentioned the Bruges game where, 5 of the goals effectively came or started at the one danger area that we'd all identified before the game anyway. And what happened to get this guy in the first place? Because you can make it. I mean, I've said to you guys, I think on the wee WhatsApp group, there's the view of Russell Martin before he was signed and after he was signed. Before, don't think they're really impressed. Afterwards, you're sort of saying, well, when he was at Milton Keynes Dons and was at Swansea, limited resources, and Southampton, he got them promoted, and it's not unusual to get to go right back down. Is there something we're missing here, Lee?
No, I don't think we are. I mean, I think there's probably an element of all of us wanted to give him a chance. In fact, well, not all of us, because the entire support didn't want to give him a chance. There was guys that just thought he would fail from the word go. I think a couple of us are on this call just now, but I think we were all willing to try and look at the positives from his tenures at his different clubs, Mark. But for me, and I've said it time and again, this is a guy whose entire footballing career is just immersed in mediocrity. That's his playing career and his coaching career. I mean, he will talk about how he improved clubs. I know that Alistair loves that phrase about there needs to be a certain element of pain, and it's going to be so worth it. I know that drove you crazy, Alistair, but
That's enough about his private life.
yeah, I mean, I just didn't see where there was the massive improvement at these clubs. Like when you looked at how he done at MK Dons, how he done at Swansea. I mean, I felt that with MK Dons and Swansea, he absolutely did improve them, but they still finished in areas of the league where you would just expect those teams to be fighting round about. So it was completely mediocre. Like improving your league position by 4 or 5 places in those types of divisions where it's very congested in terms of points. I just don't see what there is to shout about. And it was similar at Southampton. I know he got promoted from the Championship. I know that it's not an easy league to get out of, but I don't know about you guys. As far as as long as I've been watching football, especially English football, Southampton have been a Premier League club. So if they're in the Championship, the very least that their fans are going to be expecting is that they're fighting for promotion. He went up in 4th place, through the playoff. I know it's not easy, and then he got utterly humiliated in the Premier League. So I don't think this is really a surprise. It's not a surprise to me. I thought he would be terrible. He has been terrible. The only big surprise I don't think I thought would be quite as bad as this. I genuinely thought we would maybe play teams like Alloa Athletic that are literally just along the road from me. So that one was a tough one to swallow. But I thought, we would be able to put a reserve team out with the greatest respect to Alloa, and we'd be able to, give them a doing. And actually, I mean, Mark, we sat and watched that one together. I was thinking we really need to get our act together here, or we could be in a bit of bother. Like it really was getting to that point at times. We in the end we go through comfortably, but unfortunately that game, maybe the Pilsen game, the Pleasant game, however you pronounce them. Other than that, I don't think we've really been that comfortable in any other match. Like I think all of it has been a complete struggle, and for me. No, I don't think we're missing anything. I think this is exactly what a lot of us expected, and it's exactly what's been delivered. So,
David, for a wee bit of, I know you like your history, so if we can work in a little historical bit. During the administration crisis, whatever we want to call it, I remember myself and the chairman of RST, Gordon Denny, we met Dave King at Glasgow Airport, which shows you how low in the totem pole of we were that we had to get 50 minutes with him at the airport. But I said to him, I said, how much is this going to cost? And he said, 50 million to rebuild the club from, from what's been left. I totted it up. It's nearer 100 million that, the Three Bears and the rest of them have put in. And then you come to, let's take Gerrard as the starting point. So Gerrard, Gio, Beale, Clement, Barry, if you want to throw Barry in, and now Martin. So in roughly 7 seasons for that 100 million investment in Scotland, 1 league, 1 Scottish Cup, 1 League Cup. And at some point, I don't know how they're going to do it because I think the fans, getting rid of Martin was the settled will of the fans. People can say, oh, you shouldn't allow the Union Bears to chase him out. Union Bears were the vanguard of that. But I think it was already the settled will of the fans that this guy isn't going to get better. He's got the smell of death on him. He can win the next 3 or 4 games, but you've still got another disaster coming. There's no doubt about that. In terms of, are the fans ready to even accept having a manager who comes in and has a mediocre season?
The simple answer to that is no. Of course we're not. And I'll maybe slightly disagree with the Union Bears chased them out and stuff like that. I think the visible signs of protest absolutely are what hit the headlines, without doubt. But we've got owners who said that they were detached from fan feeling and they would do things that were based on the right long-term future of the club, and the financial stability of the club. They would do what was right for it. Yes, there have been all these protests. Yes, we had the sight of, for the first time in my lifetime, scoring a 93rd minute winner, and yet the crowd within 10 seconds wanted to vent about the manager, which I think spoke volumes for the depth of feeling about how disconnected the support felt from the direction Russell Martin was trying to take us in. My personal view is that all that noise, all that venom, all that poison, and it was poisonous, isn't what actually made Russell Martin's position untenable with the Americans. I think it was 20,000 empty seats against Hibs, 15,000 empty seats against Genk, hospitality not selling out, upcoming European packages not getting taken up, loss of European prize money with 5 defeats in a row in Europe, European coefficient tanking in front of our eyes, which will mean more difficulty in getting into the bigger European competitions in future. I think we have just talked about finance. I think finance is what has driven Russell Martin's demise more than anything else, because his abject failure to create a Rangers team that could win a football game drove so many people away from actually paying money to watch Rangers that we are millions and millions behind where I would think the Americans think or had predicted that the finances would be right now. So from a financial point of view, never mind an emotional point of view, never mind a fan's point of view, from a financial point of view, I don't see how they could have waited much longer, because the club were hemorrhaging millions.
Alistair, the thing that's amazed me is how quickly, and this is even before Thelwell's son was employed by the club, and apparently he started work yesterday, was that as well as Russell Martin being in a banner, Patrick Stewart was in a banner, Thelwell was in a banner, and punters have obviously identified them as being part of the problem. If we look at Thelwell to start with, coming in, you can pick MD's CV to pieces, but I thought looking at it, he was at Wolves during the kind of what I would call the Pedro Mendes era, where there was some crazy signings in and out there. He was at Everton during a very tough time. I think he did a reasonable job. He had to get players out, to replace those players. But then Chermiti, that signing, when you look at the boy's CV and the money we've spent, and then his 26-year-old son, doesn't matter whether his boy's a great talker or whatever, he simply cannot have the experience to be involved in a club like Rangers. And secondly, and this is not to make accusations, but it's unhealthy to have father and son at the spear end of, let me say, the most, I'm trying not to say shady end of football, but we all know what transfers can be like. And it just ain't healthy to have a father and son being at that cutting edge of the club in terms of recommendations, about scout. I mean, are they really going to contradict one another? So I'm really, really stunned that any of the other people we've been talking about here, whether that's Greta Steenson, the chairman, the vice chairman, or indeed Patrick Stewart, with his legal background and his 20 years at Manchester United. Am I going a conspiracy theory too far, or I think it was madness to appoint the boy?
Given that our recruitment up to this point, I mean, we've spoken a couple of times in previous pods about the players we've brought in are decent, but when you see the regression that there's been under Russell Martin and whatever, the recruitment up to now hasn't been the type of player that you would expect to bring in. I'm not talking about we need to go out and get people that bleed red, white, and blue, and they know what playing for Rangers is, and they play for the badge and all that kind of stuff. But I mentioned in the article that I sent through today, for a recruitment team prior to this young guy coming in, and we've got to remember 26 years old in the context of our captain's 33 and the head of recruitment is 26. For the previous recruitment team not to identify that, to give us a solid foundation to re-establish ourselves, we needed that solid experienced core, irrespective of whether they were Rangers minded or otherwise. We needed an experienced centre back, we needed experience in midfield, we needed an experienced centre forward who knew how to score goals. So the fact that recruitment team that apparently has been headed up by Kevin Thelwell missed that open goal, and then to bring his son in, we are not a club that can recruit players based on data, and that seems to be where we're going. We are analysing numbers, and I know I've pinged stats through before about players that we've been looking at, but first and foremost, we need to get players in the building, whether it be a 26-year-old head of recruitment or someone that's got experience of the club being head of recruitment. We need to get players out there that know what it means to go out, roll their sleeves up, and actually grind out results or get results, and then fuse in the young players round about it to be this process club now, or this development club where we're bringing in young kids, we're going to develop them, and we're going to sell them on at a profit. That's fine if they're going to come in and establish themselves, hit the ground running. But we've mentioned these previous clubs, MK Dons, Swansea, Southampton. He can bring players in like that and afford them time to come in the team. I think somebody mentioned Walter Smith earlier. Walter Smith struggled to bring young players into the team because he had a successful team, and he couldn't give young players 5, 6, 7 games to run in. So if this guy is coming in, well, he seems to be in through the door, then he's going to have to listen. And he's going to have to listen in terms of the type of player that we need at the moment, because the type of player that we need is not the type of player that we've been bringing in.
Lee, when we're talking about, if we shift on to the new manager, well, first of all, from what I've seen and read, I don't think MD outside a tight inner circle in the club has any clue about who they're looking for, who they've talked to, whatever. They'll obviously be keeping this very tight, although no doubt there'll be sightings of various people in hotel lobbies and airport lounges. Are we talking ourselves as a fan base into a cul-de-sac with so much talk about Steven Gerrard? And I'm sure most of us have watched the pod that he did with Rio Ferdinand, which I think we agreed has probably been recorded maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, possibly before the sacking, because I'm sure that Rio would have mentioned that if he had it. But we're picking up little bits of clues there that he wants to come back in. I like Gerrard. I think he was an absolute star. I think he put bums on seats. I think we are still benefiting from what I call, although nobody else seems to call it, the Gerrard effect, where the interest in the club, extra season tickets, blah, 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 blah. So he's a star. I think that I don't think it was a revolution. I think it was an evolution where we get slightly better with every transfer window with Gerrard in 155. However, the one thing that you can say about him is, in the Scottish context, won the really important one, but it was one trophy out of 9 that he could possibly have won at that time. So in terms of would he be the right man to go back to, and are we hanging our hats on almost like an impossible dream?
Maybe. I mean, I'm possibly the wrong person to ask because, as you know, I'm all in on Steven Gerrard returning. I have been from the start since we lost that Scottish Cup tie to Queens when I finally gave up on Phil Clement. It's who I wanted back. I wanted us to go and get him then. I felt like he left with unfinished business for whatever reason. I know that's been speculated about why he left. I want to just pick up one thing about the 1 and 9 mark because it's something that I debate with people a lot on the message board, and it's something that really annoys me. Because when you say 1 and 9, and I know it's factually correct, but for me, that was something that Celtic supporters and their friends in the media used as a comfort blanket because they were absolutely devastated that we just went to an unbeaten title. We'd absolutely humiliated them when they were going to get their 10 in a row because they thought they were always going to get it their own way. And that was their way of belittling this man's achievements. And it seems like some of our supporters have swallowed it. If you say 1 and 9, that to me says that you're holding it against him that he didn't win anything in his first season. I would just challenge anyone to go and look up Hibs 5, Rangers 5, and have a look at our squad from that day. It was the last day of the season before Steven Gerrard came in, and people are genuinely holding it against him that he didn't win one of those first 3 trophies. I just don't buy it. And I think if you look at it like that, I think if any Rangers fan took a step back, they say, actually, that makes sense. It was a complete shambles. I mean, some of the players that we had in the team that day. And that isn't to, belittle some of these guys who were obviously given their all at the time. But I agree with you. When Gerrard came in, he galvanised us. We got better year on year until we finally got to the point where we did win the title. Should we have won more? Yes. He absolutely got it wrong in some of the cups. I think he underestimated some of the cups, possibly because he's come from a club where that's what they did. They would rest players and, I think he knew the challenges of Rangers, but for me anyway, he definitely underestimated some of the cups. He got it wrong. We should have won more. There's no debating that. But what I would say is of the names that are floating about at the moment, I think our fan base will be happy with some of them. I think, fan base will be happy with someone like Muscat. They would be happy. Some of them would be happy with someone like Deitch, who I've just read half an hour before we started speaking has apparently ruled himself out. There might be a smaller number would be happy with someone like Derek McInnes, but I don't think any of them are going to excite the support in the same way Steven Gerrard does. And I've not heard a name yet that would excite me more than Steven Gerrard returned. And I challenge the club to do that. I think I'm pretty open here. I'm not saying it's got to be the be all and end all. It's got to be Steven Gerrard. I would like us to do a process. I would like to speak to people. I would like us to think big and think outside the box. That's why we employ guys like Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart. That's why they get paid a lot of money. But at the same time, we go back to it, and as you know, as Duncan and David were saying, we understand the supporters what it takes to put a winning team in the park. We understand what's going to galvanise our support. And for me, it's Steven Gerrard that will do that at the moment with the names I'm reading. I can't get too excited about everyone else. I think the other ones are bigger gambles. But, you know, that's where
Well,
I am.
thanks for giving me a scalping about my addiction to Timmy talk there. Duncan, we don't have an insight into what the club's strategy is, what menu they're reading, if you will. Are you minded that we go for what we could call a big name, or are you looking at safety first? You know, we can pull names out the hat. We don't have an insight into how recruitment like this really works. We don't know who's available, who's amenable. You know, people are talking about, you know, like Derek McInnes. You know, think of a few other Scottish coaches, and you're thinking, well, you know, you look at St Mirren with the resources they've had, and he understands the game. You know, East Belfast boy, you know, obviously would fit in. What's your view? What do we need at this point? Is it going for a name that will, you know, maybe transform the support, or is it somebody that's a safe pair of hands?
That's a very difficult question, and that's why Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart are paid an enormous amount of money. For me, I think there are only two real potential candidates, and I would say that Steven Gerrard and Derek McInnes. I think they both offer different things. I think Gerrard comes, like he did previously, with that gravitas, that big name, the bums on seats that you've talked about, the Gerrard effect would be reinvigorated. That's not to demean also what he did in his time at the club, and I think Lee's right to point out where we were when he took over to where he left us. We were in a much, much better position as a club, as a team, and as a support when he left. Derek McInnes, I think, will not have universal appeal to the fan base, the wider fan base. But if we are looking at perhaps a pair of hands to come in and steady the ship, who knows the Scottish game inside out, who will make us competitive in the SPFL, who will, there is no doubt, we will be coached, organised, we will be difficult to beat, and we will likely win more games than we don't under Derek McInnes, then that is an option. Can he, given the further resources, a little bit like he has with Hearts, he's probably got as much money at his disposal as a manager now than he has had in his career. That would increase again when he went to Rangers, with the ability of being able to work with the football director, etc. Would he be able to take himself to the next level? I think Stephen Robinson is a really interesting one. It's a name that I've started to hear a little bit more as things have gone on. Again, you're not going to get universal wide appeal, but he's probably the closest appointment to appointing somebody like we did when we appointed Alex McLeish. So an up-and-coming manager who has proved his worth with another SPFL club. Again, I think if you've ever watched the St Mirren team, they are organised, they're coached well. He seems to carry respect in the game and with players. He's not somebody that you hear sort of talked about in any kind of negative way. That's slightly more of a gamble, and potentially can look, I'm not saying it would be, but could look like a downsizing in terms of ambition. I think that would require the support to just think a little bit more outside the box, to borrow that phrase that Lee said there, in terms of this is an opportunity to build and grow both the club and the manager. And we've done it before, you know. McLeish was not a rookie by any means, but he wasn't a proven winner as a manager. He was as a player when he was appointed us, but not necessarily as a manager. Other names have been mentioned. For me, the board have got a choice between, do they go for that big name that carries the gravitas, or do they go for the safe pair of hands who, realistically, under McInnes, I'd expect us to win at least one cup in the season that remains, which gives them a platform and a base to build going forward. I think with Gerrard, it would be the same. I'm not so sure about Robinson, whether he would get us to that point, but like I say, it's a difficult decision. And as I said at the top of the programme, they absolutely have to get it right because they got the previous one very, very wrong.
David, I'll come to you in a wee minute. What I'm going to say now is we do these podcasts occasionally. There are podcasts that are very slick. I tend to like things to be a bit more kind of rock and roll and fanzine, but you four guys have been, for over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, you've been in the press box. You're obviously chosen to go into the press box because I think you can do a job. You've got slightly different perspectives, different views, but I think, the fact that we keep using you, I think, tells you I've got quite a bit of respect for all four of you. So I don't want to be formulaic. I don't want to use gizmos in the podcast. It's to give people a bit of a chat, but I think when you're doing it weekly, you can maybe get into a bit of a bit of a routine. So, David, give me your thoughts, and I'll just open it up to you. Whatever you want to speak about the players, the new manager's obviously going to be a thing. Just going to go around the four of yous and just ask, what are your views in what's obviously a very crucial time in the history of our club moving forward. The Americans have come in, they've invested 50 million in buying the shares. Between them and the other investors, they're looking at another 20 million in the next 2 seasons. So they ain't here to fail. And in terms of what they're doing just now, I think they've got a chance to salvage this season. But it's got to be the right decision. We keep saying it's got to be the right decision, but how many times are we going to sack people too early? You can argue, I think maybe the clearest one in that was Gio. But it's opinions, So David, your thoughts, just a plain sheet of paper you've got to write on here.
No, but I think the natural thing to do first is just carry on from what Duncan's just talked about. Because let's be honest, at the time this podcast is going out, by far the biggest talking point is who should be the next Rangers head coach stroke manager. And actually, just describing it as head coach stroke manager, I think is something that the club itself needs to have a think about, because we have put in this structure and we say that it's the way forward. It's going to be the way that they want to organise the club, and we keep using the word manager, whereas the club doesn't call it a manager anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we've described Steven Gerrard, the way we've described Derek McInnes, sounds like managers to me. It sounds like people who want a bit more responsibility than just coaching a team and putting it out in the park. They want, I would imagine they'll want a bit more say in how the club itself organises, how they deal with recruitment, how they deal with all kinds of things. The media, who knows, all kinds of things. I'm with Lee in terms of if you do agree that this is one they absolutely have to get right. If you've got any decision in your life that you want to absolutely get right, the first thing you'll do is take the one that's the smallest risk, the one that's got the best chance of success. And if you've got somebody who's done the job before and was successful in it and is available again for free, then I would imagine the most tempting thing to do if you were in charge of Rangers right now would be go and get the guy who's the last one that won the league, the last one that dominated Celtic, the last one that created a squad worth 100 million quid. He done all that. So why would you not, if you want to absolutely have the smallest risk of getting it right, why would you not do that? But my counter to that would be the Steven Gerrard from 2018 didn't walk into this structure of a club that we say that we now want to have. is he happy at being a head coach with some of the other responsibilities stripped away into other departments? I'm not sure of that. I don't actually know. I don't know if that was what the structure was in Saudi or Aston Villa. I don't actually know, but he was called the manager at Aston Villa. I know that. Uh, I'm with Lee though. I think that if I was to choose myself, he would be the direction I would go in. The other name I think is very similar to his, who is probably out of a price range, and maybe he doesn't want to come up here now, would be Lampard, who's doing a terrific job at Coventry. He might not have had the best time at Everton and the best time at Chelsea in his two spells, but he's got a lot of experience. He's got gravitas. He's got respect. He's got a great career in football. You could argue his star's shining a bit brighter than Steven Gerrard's is at the moment. If you want to go down that kind of big name respect route, and Muscat's the other one for me in terms of he's not got the gravitas and the respect that maybe the other two have automatically got, but he's got a lot of shiny things as a manager, and in more than one country. He's actually won trophies in three different countries, and he's played for the club. He won a treble as a player, and he was an aggressive, hard to like, moaning bad loser type, and I think that's the kind of manager he is as well. So I think that would possibly work. I don't see anything that attracts me towards Stephen Robinson other than saying that he offers nothing that Derek McInnes doesn't offer better. McInnes has been more successful with smaller clubs than Robinson. He's got more experience. I just don't see what Robinson brings that McInnes doesn't bring, apart from he wouldn't cost as much to get out of his contract that he's in just now, because McInnes, I think, just signed for 4 years on at Tynecastle, so he would cost quite a bit to take away from that contract. But yeah, I think in summary, what I'm trying to say is, if I try and tie up what Duncan's been saying, what Lee's been saying, what Alistair's been saying, in terms of gambling and risk and where the club is, etc., if the structure of the club fits what Gerrard's looking for, Gerrard is what this club's looking for. So that's where I would go.
Yeah. Moving on to Alistair. I want to take a slightly strange detour here, as I often do. I remember when I first met our late lamented executive officer and Stewart Robertson, and the person who's the director of the club to me said, "What do you think about him?" I met him up in Stornoway at an event up there, and I said, "He tucks his tie inside his belt. That's what I think of him." Right? And there was a bit of a, "What?" And I said, "He tucks the tie inside his belt. That's all I need to fucking know about him." Right? And when we come to Martin, can some of you stop laughing for a minute? And when we come to Martin, and I know that people kind of laugh at traditions, or they think, "Oh, I'm Joe Cool," right? But I was a great fan of the Wire, the series. I used to watch it on FX before it became popular. And there's a bit in there where there's a baseball game, and one guy's got a jacket and a shirt and a tie, and the other guy's in a t-shirt, and it's 90 degrees, and he says, "Man, what are you doing? You know, it's 90 degrees out here." And the response was, "Look the part, be the part, motherfucker." And I think part of, being involved in Rangers is different. We're literally the only club in Britain where that main stand is proper hospitality. It's shirt and tie, right? And I think these things matter. People say, "Oh, we're all casual, blah, blah." Who cares? It makes us different, right? And I think as well as that, if you look the part, it's the expectation, it's the connection with what's gone before you. If you get those small details wrong, and it's obviously been sanctioned by the board and Patrick Stewart, I think if you get those minor details wrong, it's not a good foundation. Years ago, I talked to Billy Simpson, great centre forward for us, and he said, Struth would come up behind you when you were getting, once you'd done your training, and he'd kind of, the sixpence too much for a haircut, son. And he said, because you looked at, your own presentation, that molded into, seeped into other areas of your life, including the football, was that, you were Rangers, you were always on show, you had to do it right, there was no second chances, it was, bang, 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 pressure, pressure, pressure. So in terms of that and what we look for in the club, does that actually matter these days? I mean, I know some people say, oh, all that matters is winning. But I think there are things that are even more important than that. And I think the next guy, we've got to have a reset with this club at some point to say, this is actually more important than you, son.
I think if you're going to make a decision, because as you say, he's obviously had this sanctioned. We've got players now going to matches with hoodies and shorts on, coming off the bus with hoodies and shorts on. And I know that it's different culture and whatever these days. If you're going to make that decision, given how significant the traditions of the club are, how they've been respected over the years by Martin's predecessors, if you're going to make a decision like that, you do so for a position of strength. He's never been at any stage in a position of strength to make that call, and to exacerbate the situation further by saying in an interview, "I don't like wearing a shirt and tie; it makes me too sweaty." That to
Whilst
me
he
was
was wearing a mohair
correct.
shirt.
Correct. That to me, to all intents and purposes, was sticking the middle finger up to us, saying stick your traditions wherever you want to stick your traditions. And then you flip that, and obviously Stephen Gerrard. I'm similar to Lee. I've been Gerrard for the get go, but I actually watched that again the other day. That he was doing one of these things where they were going through the kits that he'd worn throughout his career and the kits that meant something to him. And he was asked I think it was quite early in his tenure, and he was asked by the interviewer about the collar and tie tradition. And he says, I'm not a great fan of collar and tie. I'm much more comfortable in a tracksuit. I'd prefer to wear a tracksuit. But this club expect the manager to wear collar and tie. So I'm I'm fully behind respecting traditions and whatever. And that ticks a massive box. Gerrard obviously ticked a lot of boxes by that time anyway. But I'm not saying, right, we go and get Stephen Gerrard back, and one of the main reasons for getting Gerrard back is he all gets back in shirt and tie. But he wasn't comfortable with the tradition, but he respected the tradition, which flies in the face of what Russell Martin did. Even coming to home games under Clement, under Michael Beale, we were coming to home games, we were doing the pre-match walk around the stadium in shirt and tie. The players were in shirt and tie. That's gone now. Oh, sorry, certainly has gone up until this point. So I kind of understand where people are coming from, what they can wear, what they like if we're winning football matches. But that tradition shouldn't die. It shouldn't just go away just because it's a different society now and we don't have that turning up to training in collar and tie, and we don't have the Bill Struth sort of making sure you're turned out smartly. I represent Rangers Football Club at the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether it's in 2025 or 1955. You still have to look smart. You still have to respect the badge that you're playing for, and you've got to respect the supporters you're playing for. So if and when we do get a new manager, I think one of the first jobs that they have to do, one of the first statements they have to make is that the collar and tie tradition is coming back in.
After that wee diversion down Savile Row, can I just say, for the next podcast, I'm all expecting you collar tie, blazers, and I'll be inspecting your flannels to make sure they've been properly pressed. Lee, we'll go round a wee bit just for the next 5 minutes and thoughts that have occurred to you, during tonight's recording and looking forward to the future. Have you any words of wisdom to impart to our chief executive and his board, or just a commentary about how the club's been this year or the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, first of all, something that has occurred to me a little bit is that we have spoken a lot about Russell Martin, but I think guys like Kevin Thelwell have still gotten off a little bit easy with the support. I feel like he's part of the problem, Mark. I do. I'm not immediately calling for his sacking or anything like that, but we spoke at the last podcast. I mean, I did say that the last time he spoke, and he done that interview, that I thought he spoke pretty well. Like he addressed a few points, like he addressed the need to use loan signings. He addressed the kind of policy in terms of who of who we were going to sign and why. That was good. But then he then came out with that statement about Russell Martin being one of the best coaches I'd ever worked under. That was alarm bells massively for me. I think the jury's still out on, in terms of the signings we have made. Like you, I like the look of a few of them. I guess from my point of view going forward, one of the guys on one of the many group chats, someone said that this particular system that we've now got doesn't suit a manager as such. It suits a head coach, and therefore this type of system does not suit Rangers. And it was a very simplistic thing to say, but I think it's when you actually put it down to brass tacks, I think there's a bit of truth in it. Are we going to go in a direction where Kevin Thelwell is going to have complete autonomy over who we sign and who we sell? I would be very worried if that was the case, I have to say. I think there needs to be a balance. But I think that balance needs to be struck. It has to go the other way as well. So I felt like when Gerrard was here last time, he was given too much clout, and that if he just said, I'm not selling him, then it didn't happen. And I think that's wrong as well. I think we need someone in Kevin Thelwell's position who understands they need to work with the manager in terms of the players we bring in, and in terms of the players who go out. And at this moment in time, I feel like he's not proven that we're in good hands. That's for sure. For a number of reasons, none more from the fact that they brought the manager in and then completely doubled down. And the comment about he's one of the best coaches he's ever worked with, that really is quite alarming, because there's no evidence to suggest that can be the case. And it then makes you think, well, do we really trust this guy to get it right? Now, they might very well bring in a Steven Gerrard, and that'd be great. That would appear. I mean, for me, my brother actually said this to me today. It's an open goal for them, really. If they've got the choice to bring him back, that is the one they bring back. Because if it doesn't work out, they can say, well, look, we gave you what you wanted. Of course, we brought back Steven Gerrard. It's not our fault. But I think there needs to be a bit of a shift in the way we do things. I don't think everything can be left to him. I think the manager does need to have that certain element of input in terms of who we're bringing in, especially if it's someone like Steven Gerrard, who, as I can't remember, sorry, if it was Duncan or David made the point, we improved year on year in terms of who we brought in. Their squad continually looked stronger. And let's get it right, Steven Gerrard left us when we were top of the league, and it was his team that then got to a European final. So we went from that disastrous 5-5 to a European final under his tenure. And if you look at it in that kind of simplistic term, I have to agree with that comment on that aforementioned group chat today, that it does that. I don't think this current system is necessarily going to suit us. If we're going to go down just the stat-driven way, I don't think it suits Rangers. I think we need a manager who can say, yeah, this is a player that will come in and really perform for this club, and he'll know what it means. So that's my words of wisdom. That's what I would like to see us get back to.
I'm very sorry that you keep those words of wisdom for other WhatsApp channels rather than ours, but never mind. We know our places now. As you know, I like to try and keep the podcast for around about an hour. So in terms of, I'll just go from Duncan to David to Alistair. And if you can be a little bit sharper than Lee was there, maybe 30 seconds to 60 seconds, just to say, if you were able to talk to the board, whether that's Patrick or Andrew or whoever, what are your thoughts on where's the club and what's needed just now, and whether that's on the pitch, off the pitch, manager, or whatever is the particular thing you want to get off your chest? Duncan.
I think it's probably an opportunity to sell some home truths. This is probably the most unlikable Rangers team in my lifetime, which kind of depresses me a little bit. There's no heroes. There's nobody I would be disappointed if we sold. There's nobody at the current time who gets me up out of my seat. And apathy has already set in. And I think we're at a really pivotal point in the club in terms of if the next appointment is not correct, then you are going to see, as David has already indicated, there are gaps in the stadium on a match day. We've been there before, but it's a long time since gaps as big as that have appeared. We are all immensely passionate about this club, and we, the owners, the players, the manager, we all want the same thing. We all want success. But we, as the fans, we need something to hold on to. So they have to go out, they have to appoint the right manager, and they have to give us something that's going to give us something positive to hold on to during this season. Obviously, we want to win the league, and I'm maybe a little bit optimistic, but with the right appointment, I actually don't think the league is gone yet. I think by sacking Martin when we did, we retain a glimmer of hope. But there are 2 cups to play for. We're already in a semi-final of 1. So, go out, start that success this season and build on that success.
Right. David, I think what Duncan's saying there is we've been through survival mode for quite a while. There's been a few stutters. Now we've got, with the new ownership, it's a new era. So starting that new era, what would you say to the board?
Can I do mine to the Americans rather than to Patrick Stewart, please? Because I would actually be wanting to question the Americans as to just how many mistakes Patrick Stewart makes before they start questioning his position. If I look back over the course of his tenure, he told us all that Philip Clement was going nowhere. We don't sack managers after we lost to Queen's Park, and then sacked him within a fortnight. He was quick to denigrate the display at the Bath Rangers Celtic game at Ibrox because I don't think he knew who Graham Souness was. And he was quick to apologise to our enemies when he has never apologised for anything to our own support. He has overseen the appointment of, without doubt, the worst manager or head coach in not just my lifetime, but in the history of Rangers Football Club. I want to know how many strikes he gets before his position is up for debate. And I think it's telling that the open letter this week talked about how the chairman and vice chairman want to have a close look at the recruitment of the next manager, head coach, because that, to me, cuts right across what the Americans said when they arrived, which was that they would put the right people in positions of responsibility, they would let them run the club, and they would hold them accountable. Well, I'm just wanting to know when accountability goes beyond Russell Martin to the top decision maker at Rangers Football Club. And if I add on the one about appointing Thelwell's son, I can only assume that the chief executive signed that one off as well. So for me, I think there's a top position at the club which should be under extreme scrutiny right now. And I think that's what I'd want to ask the Americans.
Thank you, David. I agree with those words of wisdom. Alistair, not let you to get the last comment, is it?
My words of wisdom would be probably towards Kevin Thelwell. To pick up these points with the open goal here, it's Gerrard. It has to be, for me, it has to be Gerrard. We've talked about Derek McInnes, we've talked about Stephen Robinson, we've talked about other potential candidates. It has to be Gerrard. My concern at the moment is that the deal breaker for Gerrard will be Kevin Thelwell's role at the football club. And that's a dangerous game for Kevin Thelwell to play. Mark, you mentioned it earlier. The banner that was unfurled didn't just have Russell Martin's face on it. It had Kevin Thelwell's head on it. It had Patrick Stewart's head on it. So if Thelwell is the deal breaker here and it emerges that he's the deal breaker for Gerrard and we get the appointment wrong, I would suggest at that point his position becomes untenable. However, at this moment in time, if he chooses to dilute his role or potentially take a sideways step, whatever it is, fulfill a different role at the club and give Gerrard much more autonomy that you would expect, you would align with a manager rather than a head coach, that would be a potential tick in the box for Kevin Thelwell with the supporters. But as I say, if it emerges, Gerrard's basically said it today, if he gets the right opportunity, we've heard today for Jermaine Defoe, who I think would be part of his coaching team. We've heard for Gary McAllister, who basically says he's a phone call away. His coaching team's ready. We're hearing all this stuff, it's getting drip fed in. Gerrard's team's ready. The only thing that I think would stop Steven Gerrard coming back to Rangers just now is his role at the football club, how that fits. I don't think Steven Gerrard would come to the football club with the reputation he has, the reputation he established at the football club, and be a head coach. Be someone that, you know what, Stephen, here's your players, you go and work with them. The guys have mentioned it earlier. With a limited budget, he built us and developed the club and made the squad better every single year he went through. And had he been backed in 2021, then there's probably a compelling argument to say he doesn't go to Aston Villa. So he's now in a position where he's got a squad that he can probably get a tune out of between now and January. Then he gets the opportunity for investment in January and gets the opportunity to add in the key elements, the key ingredients that we need, that experience, that backbone to the team, to pick up Duncan's point, that could potentially lay the foundations to get us back into the title race or indeed win that title race. But Kevin Thelwell will potentially, whether it be bruised ego or otherwise, might need to just take that hit in the short term to make this opportunity work, because if he doesn't, similar to what David's saying about Patrick Stewart, how many more chances does this guy get before his position at the football club comes under even more scrutiny than what it is already?
Thank you for that, Alistair. And a wee surprise for you just before we shut down. I believe that you've written a mighty tome about if Steven Gerrard was a cult hero at Liverpool, we had one of our own at Ibrox.
Yeah,
this will be available.
That's at the warehouse. It came in the warehouse earlier this week, so it's now available on Amazon. The wee dip in earlier, and it's already moving its way up the charts. So really delighted. It's a really interesting project. Obviously, as he's associated with the goal against Bruges, and a lot of people, when you mention Scott Nisbet, it is that goal against Bruges. But hopefully through the book, people will find out a bit more about Scott and the challenges he faced when he was growing up, and challenges he faced trying to make his way into the Rangers first team, and how cruel it was for him to have his career cut short at the age of 25, when he was probably a first pick, or certainly an integral part of that squad at that time when we're edging towards a European final. And then there's the story of life after football and his incredibly brave battle against stage 4 cancer, a battle that he's very proudly winning at the moment. So yeah, delighted to have that other opportunity, and I hope it does well for him.
And hopefully it's very successful for both Nizzy and yourself. Gentlemen, thanks for your time this evening. I get the feeling we may meet again fairly shortly, depending on the announcements. And obviously all eyes are now swiveled onto the signing for the new manager, and the first game hopefully is in place for Dundee United at Ibrox, which I think we can say if there is a new manager, it might possibly be a full house. So thank you again for this evening, and see you again shortly.